Whispers floated through the big stone cathedral. A young bride stood all alone. The minutes felt very long and heavy. The groom was nowhere to be found. Then the thick wooden doors crashed open with a loud bang. A cold wind rushed down the long aisles. The man who walked in did not come to save her pride. He came to take an old debt that could never be broken. The 17th day of October was meant to be the brightest day for the Astor family. Inside the huge open space of St. Jude's Cathedral in Newport, Rhode Island, 400 of the richest and most important people in the world sat quietly. There were senators from the government, men who ran big money companies, and nobles from Europe. They all waited under the high curved ceilings that were covered with white flowers that cost $500,000. In a private room behind thick soft curtains, Genevieve Astor stood still in front of a golden mirror. Her special silk wedding dress felt more like a heavy cloth for a sad day than a happy prize. She was 24 years old. She was the last daughter of a family that was losing everything. And she was completely alone. "He is gone," whispered Genevieve's best friend, Vivian Sinclair. Vivian's hands shook as she held a crumpled piece of thick paper. His best man just found this note in the room where the groom was getting ready. Nathaniel had left through the service elevator 30 minutes earlier. His private plane was already cleared to fly from T.F. Green Airport, before anyone even put the veil on Genevieve's head. Genevieve looked at her face in the mirror. Her face stayed calm like smooth white china. Nathaniel Montgomery was not a brave man, but he had a lot of money. The Montgomery Company was the only thing that could save the Astor family from losing every last dollar. For 3 generations the Astors had hidden their huge debts behind the proud look of old rich families. This wedding was really a business deal dressed up as love. Genevieve had agreed to it so her old father would not go to prison, and so the family would not lose their big old house. "Read it," Genevieve said. Her voice was steady and strong. Vivian swallowed and opened the paper. It only says, "Genevieve, I cannot pay the toll. They came to collect, and I refuse to be the collateral. Forgive me, but the Rothesay debt is now yours to bear alone." Genevieve's father, Charles Astor, sat bent over in a tall chair in the corner. His face had no color left. When he heard the name Rothesay, he made a sound that was half a gasp and half a cry. "The Rothesay debt," Charles said. His hands shook hard as he pressed them to his head. "He found out. God help us. Nathaniel found out, and he ran." "Father, what is he talking about?" Genevieve asked, turning from the mirror. "Who is Rothesay? We owe money to Wellington Trust, not a Rothesay." Charles looked up at his daughter. His eyes were wide with a fear Genevieve had never seen in all the years she had known him. "Wellington Trust is only a fake company, Genevieve. It has been for 100 years. The Astor money was not made from trains and ships in the 1800s. My grandfather borrowed a great deal of money from a private group that works in the dark corners of the world's money. That group does not grow old, does not forgive, and does not take cash when a promise is broken." A heavy quiet filled the bridal room. Genevieve had heard the dark stories that rich people whispered, stories of helpers who never died and who paid for the big factories long ago. Stories of powerful hunters who wore fine suits and lived in tall buildings in London and New York. She had always thought they were only scary fairy tales that rich people told to make their money sound magical. "You sold me to a ghost story," Genevieve said in a low, dangerous voice. "Nathaniel's family was supposed to take the debt. His grandfather had special protection." Charles cried, "But if Nathaniel has broken the marriage, the contract falls to the first daughter. That is you." Outside the room the string players had played the same soft music 4 times already. The 400 guests were starting to talk louder. Their voices came through the cathedral doors. The shame was growing. It felt like the last bit of respect for the Astor family was being killed in front of everyone. Genevieve closed her eyes. Fear was something she could not allow herself right now. Nathaniel's fear would not be the end of her story. "Vivian," Genevieve said in a voice that left no room for argument, Give me my flowers. Genevieve, what are you doing? Vivian asked, scared. You cannot go out there. We must take you out the back door. We must call the guards and run away like Nathaniel did. Genevieve grabbed the bunch of white orchids from the table. I will not let these people enjoy talking about me running away. I will walk down that long path. I will stand in front of Reverend Pendleton, and I will tell the guests myself that the wedding is over. The asters may fall today, but we will fall while looking them in the eye. She ignored her father's cries for her to stop. Genevieve stepped out of the private room. The big oak doors of the main hall were pushed open by two surprised helpers. When she stepped into the open space, the music stopped at once. The sudden quiet in the cathedral was so deep, it hurt the ears. 400 heads turned. Phones were quietly put down. Soft gasps went through the seats as the rich people of the East Coast saw the bride walking alone down the long red path. No groom stood waiting at the front. Genevieve kept her head high and her eyes looking straight ahead. Every step felt like walking on sharp glass. The smell of melting candles and costly perfume made it hard to breathe. She reached the front, climbed the 3 white stone steps, and turned to face the crowd. Reverend Arthur Pendleton stood beside her. His hands held his Bible tightly and shook. "Miss Astor, where is Mr. Montgomery?" the Reverend asked. "Mr. Montgomery," Genevieve said in a clear voice that filled the whole church, "has decided to—" She never finished the sentence. The heavy iron doors at the back of the cathedral did not open gently. They were thrown open hard. They hit the stone walls with a sound so loud that several guests screamed. At once the air inside the cathedral grew cold. The flames of 1,000 tall candles along the aisles danced wildly, leaning away from the entrance as if they wanted to run from the cold wind. The colored glass windows seemed to grow darker. A long, strange shadow stretched down the middle path. Standing in the open doorway was a man who seemed to own the very air in the room. He was very tall. His wide shoulders were covered by a perfect black suit that looked like soft night velvet. His hair was black as a raven's wing and brushed back from a face that was beautiful and frightening at the same time. But it was his eyes that held everyone still. They were bright silver and full of the cleverness of a hunter. 4 men in dark gray suits walked beside him. They moved together like a trained army. The leader of the 4 was Dominic Mercer. He had a scar on his jaw and empty eyes. He locked the cathedral doors behind them, so that 400 of the most powerful people in the world were trapped inside. Fear rose in the seats, but a deeper cold fear made everyone stay quiet. No one spoke. Alaric Rothesay began to walk down the aisle. His feet made no sound on the marble floor. As he passed the seats, the rich guests, company bosses, politicians, and society ladies pulled back without thinking. Some of the older men, who controlled big parts of the world's money, lowered their heads as if they already knew they must obey. They knew who he was. They knew what he was. Genevieve stood still at the front. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. The dangerous feeling that came from the man was so strong it was hard to breathe. Every part of her body told her to run as fast as she could, but her feet stayed stuck to the stone. Alaric walked past the front row, where her crying father sat. He climbed the steps and stopped only a few inches from Genevieve. Up close, his beauty was almost too much to look at, yet it did not feel human. His skin was pale and perfect, and held no warmth. When he looked down at her, Genevieve felt like a small bird caught in the eyes of a hunting hawk. "Nathaniel Montgomery is crying right now inside a plane flying over the Atlantic Ocean," Alaric said. His voice was deep and rich and seemed to shake inside Genevieve's chest. He thought the ocean could keep him safe from what he owed. He was wrong. Genevieve made herself look into his silver eyes and did not look away. "And who are you to talk about what he owes?" A small, cold smile touched Alaric's mouth. "I am the one who built your family's life, Genevieve Astor. My name is Alaric Rothesay. Your cowardly groom left you here because he learned that marrying you meant taking a debt he could never pay." Reverend Pendleton stepped forward. His hands shook hard. "Sir, You are stopping a holy ceremony. I must ask you to. Alaric did not even look at the priest. Dominic Mercer stepped up to the front. A heavy, quiet gun could be seen under his jacket. The silent threat made the Reverend freeze in fear. Alaric turned all his attention back to the bride. In the year 1874, your great-grandfather sat across from me in a room in London. He begged for money to save his shipping business. I gave him the wealth of kings. The promise was simple. A daughter of the Astor blood, pure and untouched, would be given when the debt became due. Genevieve's breath caught. You are not right in the head. 1874 was 150 years ago. You look no older than 30. Alaric reached out. His long, cold fingers gently touched the line of Genevieve's jaw. The touch sent a wave of ice through her body, but she did not pull away. Time is only a problem for people who die, he said softly, leaning close so only she could hear the sharp edge in his voice. I am the king of a court you did not know existed until 5 minutes ago. Your father knew the debt was due this year. He tried to give you to the Montgomerys so their family's special protection would hide you. A clever but desperate trick. But I do not allow what belongs to me to be given to someone else. Genevieve's mind raced. The whispered stories, her father's terror, the unnatural cold of the man in front of her. It was all real and impossible at the same time. She was standing at the altar with a vampire. So you have come to collect your money? Genevieve asked, using pride to cover her fear. Or are you here to kill us, to teach a lesson? I have not come for blood today, little bird. His silver eyes flashed with a dark, hungry look. I have come for my bride. A shared gasp rose from the front row as the guests tried to hear every word. Alaric turned a little toward the frightened priest. Reverend, you have a marriage paper on that stand, do you not? I do, Pendleton stammered. Cross out his name, Alaric ordered, in a soft voice that left no choice. The priest reached for his pen at once. Write mine. Genevieve stepped back half a step. You cannot do this. I will not marry a monster just to pay a debt. In less time than a blink, faster than any human eye could follow, Alaric closed the space between them. His hand took her waist and pulled her against his hard chest with no effort at all. You will marry me, Genevieve, Alaric whispered against her ear. His breath chilled her skin. Because if you do not say I do in the next 3 minutes, Dominic will lock those doors, and my men will kill every living person in this cathedral, starting with your father. You will watch your family drown in blood, and then I will take you anyway. Tears finally broke through Genevieve's calm face. They ran hot and fast down her cold cheeks. She looked past Alaric's wide shoulders. Her father was on his knees in the front seat, crying openly, his hands pressed together in a silent beg for her to live. The guests were trapped and did not know how close they were to dying. She had no way out. Nathaniel had left her for the wolves, but the wolf had come wearing a crown and asking for her hand. Genevieve turned back to Alaric. The pure power that came from them was dark and almost dizzying. He was not only a monster. He was a king who had planned this exact moment for more than 100 years. If I do this, Genevieve said. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out with strength. My family's debt is gone forever, and no one in this room is hurt. You have my word, Alaric answered. His eyes locked on hers with burning force. You will be my queen, protected by my shadow, tied to my forever. Genevieve took a deep shaking breath and stood taller. She looked at the terrified priest, who was already crying as he held out the newly changed marriage book. Go on, Reverend, Genevieve ordered. Her voice rang through the quiet cathedral. Under the watching hunter eyes of Alaric Rothesay, the vows were spoken quickly. There was no music. There was no joy. There was only the heavy weight of a contract being sealed in front of God and monsters. Do you, Genevieve Astor, take this man? The priest asked, choking on the words. I do, she whispered. Her eyes never left the silver depths of Alaric's. And do you, Alaric Rothesay, take this woman? I do, Alaric said. He slid a huge old diamond ring onto her shaking finger. The stone was cold, and cut in a time long forgotten. "Then by the power given to me," Pendleton said quickly, making the sign of the cross, "I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Alaric did not wait. He pulled Genevieve against his chest, one hand tangled in her veil, tilting her head back. When his lips met hers, it was not a soft touch of love, it was a burning mark of ownership. His mouth was icy, demanding, and overwhelming. A spark of dark, frightening electricity ran down Genevieve's spine and left her without breath and completely claimed. When he finally pulled away, the cathedral stayed in dead silence. Alaric turned to the crowd with his bride held firmly at his side. "The party is cancelled," Alaric told the room. He looked down at Genevieve. His eyes shone with proud ownership. "My wife and I have a honeymoon to begin." Leaving the altar of St. Jude's Cathedral was a blur of flashing camera lights and heavy quiet. Genevieve moved without thinking. Her hand was locked tightly in the freezing hard grip of Alaric Rothesay. Outside the cathedral, the sea wind of Newport pulled at her veil, but she hardly felt the cold. 6 black armored cars waited on the stone street, surrounded by men with guns who wore perfect suits. Dominic Mercer opened the back door of the first car and bowed his head as Alaric guided Genevieve inside. The door shut with a heavy sound, like a safe closing, cutting them off from the noisy human world. The inside of the car was dim and smelled of costly leather and rain. As the cars sped away from the cathedral, Genevieve finally let herself take a shaking breath. She unpinned the heavy veil from her hair and threw it onto the other seat. "You are shaking, Genevieve," Alaric said. He sat easily beside her, a being of deadly grace, completely calm. "Are you sad about losing Nathaniel Montgomery? Or are you afraid of the monster sitting next to you?" "I am sad about losing my freedom," she answered. Her voice trembled, but stayed sharp. She refused to shrink. "And Nathaniel was only a business deal, a coward who ran when the numbers did not add up. I cry no tears for him." A low, vibrating laugh came from Alaric's throat. "A practical queen. Excellent. But you have misunderstood the situation. Nathaniel did not simply run from the Rothesay debt. He made it worse." Genevieve turned to look at him. Her brow wrinkled. "What do you mean?" Alaric reached into his suit jacket and took out a thin silver tablet. He touched the screen and handed it to her. On it were secret bank accounts, hidden money transfers, and papers showing total money ruin. "For the past 18 months, Nathaniel has been secretly taking money from Wellington Trust, my front company, to pay for the Montgomery family's failing businesses in Europe," Alaric explained. His silver eyes narrowed. He thought he could steal from a shadow. When he learned who he was really stealing from, he tried to use the Astor marriage as a shield, hoping your family's old blood contract would give him safety in my court. Genevieve felt the blood leave her face. Nathaniel had not only left her, he had used her as a living shield against an immortal hunter. "Where is he now?" she whispered, staring at the proof on the screen. "Dominic stopped his plane over the open ocean," Alaric said, as if talking about the weather. "The plane has been sent to a private landing place in Greenland. Nathaniel will spend the rest of his human life in an underground room, adding up my accounts by hand. I hate thieves." Genevieve leaned back against the leather seat. The size of Alaric's power washed over her. The Astor family had been playing a simple game. Alaric Rothesay was the whole board. The cars did not stop at an airport. They drove straight onto a private helicopter pad, where a smooth black helicopter waited, its blades already cutting the evening air. Within minutes they were flying, moving down the eastern coast toward the shining skyline of Manhattan. "You bought me to settle a debt," Genevieve said over the sound of the spinning blades, staring out the window at the dark ocean below. "But you live forever. You could have taken my father's life, taken our things, and erased the asters from history. Why marriage? Why me? Alaric leaned forward, coming into her space. The smell of him, like the air before a storm, crushed mint and old paper, was strong and hard to ignore. Because, Genevieve, a king needs a queen. I have walked this earth for 900 years. I have seen empires fall and money turn to dust. What I value is not money, but strength that does not break. I watched you for a year. I watched you move among the snakes of high society, holding your falling family together with pure, unbroken will. I did not buy you, Genevieve. I claimed my equal. The helicopter turned sharply and went down toward a tall, modern skyscraper in Tribeca, the Rothesay Citadel. There were no company signs, no logos, only a tall tower of black glass that cut the night sky. As they landed on the roof, Genevieve stepped out into the sharp wind of the city. She was no longer a piece in a failing family game. She had been lifted to the very top of the food chain. The top floor of the Rothesay Citadel was a perfect mix of dark old beauty and clean modern style. Windows from floor to ceiling showed the city in every direction. Huge stone fireplaces and tapestries hundreds of years old showed the true age of the owner. Genevieve had barely taken off her wedding dress and put on a silk robe given by the house staff when the glass walls of the penthouse suddenly exploded inward. The sound of the strong glass breaking was like a bomb. Genevieve threw her arms over her head and dived behind a big soft sofa as sharp pieces rained down across the old rugs. From the shadows of the ruined balcony, 3 figures stepped into the room. They moved with the same unnatural, terrifying speed as Alaric. Leading them was a man with pure white hair and a deep scar that cut through his left eye. He wore a fine red suit. His eyes burned with a sick yellow light. "Alaric!" the man roared. His voice echoed with a twisted sound. "Come out and greet your guests." Genevieve held her breath and pressed herself against the floor. She knew with cold certainty that these were not human killers. In a blur of movement, Alaric appeared in the center of the room. He had taken off his suit jacket. His white shirt was open at the neck. The calm, noble look he had shown at the church was completely gone. In its place was a being of pure, uncontrolled violence. His silver eyes glowed like dying stars, and his long teeth were fully down, resting against his lower lip. "Vincent Croft," Alaric hissed. His voice dropped into a deep, terrifying tone. "You dare break into my home in New York. You broke the treaty." "Alaric," Vincent sneered, stepping over the broken glass. "The Astor bloodline was promised to the European court centuries ago. You twisted the debt. I have come to take the bride and drink her dry to even the scales." Genevieve's heart beat a wild, fast rhythm against her ribs. She was the prize in a war she did not even understand. "She is my wife." Alaric's voice shook with a possessive fury that made the floorboards tremble. "If you take another step toward her, Vincent, I will scatter your ashes over the Hudson River." Vincent jumped. The fight was not like any human fight. It was a terrifying crash of powers that moved faster than Genevieve's eyes could follow. Furniture was broken into sticks. Solid marble pillars cracked when bodies were thrown against them. Alaric tore through Vincent's 2 helpers in seconds, ripping the heart from the chest of one and snapping the neck of the other with a sickening sound. But Vincent was older and filled with wild madness. He tackled Alaric and drove him through a heavy oak dining table. As the 2 ancient hunters fought for control, Vincent's yellow eyes searched the room and locked on the soft sofa where Genevieve was hiding. With a hard kick, Vincent threw Alaric off and ran straight toward Genevieve. Instinct took over. Genevieve did not scream. She did not hide. As Vincent reached over the sofa with his teeth ready to tear her throat, Genevieve grabbed a long, sharp piece of the broken window glass from the floor. With a wild cry, she drove the makeshift blade upward and sank it deep into Vincent's shoulder. Black blood poured from the wound. It was not a killing blow, but the pure shock of a human fighting back made him stagger. That short pause was all Alaric needed. Like a shadow falling, Alaric appeared behind Vincent. With one smooth, brutal movement, Alaric took the European lord by the jaw and the top of his head, and twisted hard. The sickening sound of Vincent's spine breaking echoed through the ruined penthouse. Vincent's body fell to the floor, lifeless, and quickly turned into a pile of gray smoking ash. The penthouse fell into dead silence, except for the howling wind blowing through the shattered windows. Genevieve stayed on her knees. Her breath came in rough gasps. Her hands were covered in Vincent's black blood. Alaric turned to her. He was breathing hard. His white shirt was stained with ash and blood. The monstrous look slowly faded. His long teeth pulled back, and his silver eyes softened from a hunter's glow back to their cool, piercing color. He dropped to his knees in front of her. His cold hands gently took hers, ignoring the blood. "You are bleeding," Alaric whispered, looking at a small cut on her palm from the broken glass. "I am fine," Genevieve managed to say, looking at the pile of ash that used to be an immortal warlord. "I killed him. I stabbed him." "You distracted him," Alaric corrected softly. Fierce pride lit his face. "You fought back. Any other human would have frozen and begged for mercy. But not you, never you." He reached up and gently wiped a streak of soot from her cheek. "I promised you a kingdom, Genevieve, but to rule it, you must understand the violence it needs. Nathaniel would have let you die to save himself. I will burn the world to the ground to keep you safe, but I will not force you into the dark." Alaric brought his own wrist to his mouth and pierced the pale skin with his teeth. A drop of thick, shining red blood rose to the surface. "The contract is finished by the marriage," Alaric said, offering his bleeding wrist to her. "You can stay human. I will protect you until the end of your natural days, and you will want for nothing. But if you drink, you will leave the human world behind. You will heal, you will rule, and you will walk beside me in forever, unbreakable." Genevieve looked from his wrist to his eyes. She thought of her father crumbling under the weight of society's expectations. She thought of Nathaniel, a coward who saw her only as a deal. And then she looked at the immortal king before her. A monster, yes, but a monster who respected her strength, who laid his empire at her feet, and who had just killed to protect her. She did not want a fragile human life, built on lies and debts. She wanted power. She wanted truth. Genevieve leaned forward and wrapped her hands gently around Alaric's forearm. She did not hesitate. She pressed her lips to the wound and drank. The taste was pure joy, liquid fire and ancient starlight racing through her veins. The cut on her palm closed at once. Her senses exploded. She could hear the heartbeat of the city below, feel the shift of the wind, and see the world in breathtaking, terrifying clarity. When she finally pulled away, her own eyes were beginning to change, catching the moonlight in a brilliant predatory silver. Alaric pulled her into his chest and held his new queen as she was reborn. The Astor debt had been paid in full, and from its ashes, an immortal dynasty had just begun. At the end of every story like this one, we can learn something important. Long ago, many real families in history also made secret deals with powerful people to keep their money and land. Sometimes those deals lasted for generations, and caused great trouble for the children and grandchildren who never chose them. The lesson is simple and useful for everyone, even children. Always ask questions about promises that seem too big or too old. Ask who is really in charge. Ask what will happen if the promise is broken. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing to stand up and face the truth even when you are scared. Genevieve showed that kind of courage. She did not run. She looked the danger in the eye and made a choice that gave her family freedom and gave her a new life of strength. That is a lesson worth remembering in any time, human or otherwise. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe so you don't miss my next video.